Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Thanks for joining us for the next hour as we talk Giants football with you at 201-939-4513. You can always hit us up on Twitter at #GiantsChat. I'm Paul Dottino, he's Matt Citak. And I'll tell you, the heat out here is unbelievable in the New York metropolitan area. This is 3 days in a row that we've been 95 or higher. I guess it's supposed to be 96 today, Matt. I mean, oh, wow. Here's the thing. I saw some of the groundskeepers outside. Now, you know, the Giants don't come back. Rookies report the 15th, players on the 22nd of July. But they still got to take care of the fields here. That is not a fun thing to do in the middle of this broiling weather that we're having. Today, they were out there, I think there was some kind of nutrients or fertilizer they were putting down, but they were also overseeding the grass. The field looks awesome, I have to tell you. Rob Davis and his people do a marvelous job, but that is not fun work at this time of year.
No, I mean, it's not even fun walking from the parking lot to the front door, so I can't imagine having to stay out there in that heat and actually, do work on the field. Does not look or sound fun. Glad I'm not the one doing it.
I'll tell you a funny story about heat and about how the impact of the ground, can make a big difference. When Joe Montana left the San Francisco 49ers as a free agent and he was shopping for a place to go, he wound up deciding on the Kansas City Chiefs. So we were out to play Kansas City. And one of the things that I used to do during the radio pregame show was always go down to the field, and I would have to do the weather report, field conditions, injury report, preview the game for Bob Papa on the radio pregame. So I was always a stickler to find out everything I could about the field, the stadium, the conditions, et cetera, et cetera. So I get a hold of the head groundskeeper, and he says to me, I asked him about, what was going on with the Chiefs, Montana, and everything. Well, you're not going to believe this, but we had to rip up our whole field because of that guy. I'm like, whoa, what do you mean? Well, they had artificial turf at Arrowhead Stadium. When Montana agreed to sign his free agent contract with the Kansas City Chiefs, he had a stipulation put into the contract that they have to rip up the artificial turf and they have to put in real grass. Because he did not, remember now, he was a mobile quarterback, so he used his legs a lot. He did not, at his advanced age, want to be playing on the artificial surface. Now, the good news was, and this was the other part to the story and what kind of brought this up for me, is that they used to tell me with the old-fashioned artificial turf that was laid down in Arrowhead Stadium, it added approximately 12 degrees to the real field temperature because it was that old style. Not the new style of artificial turf that they have today, which is a lot different. But it was the old style that was like concrete. And apparently, what they would tell me is the other issue they had there all the time is that because of the 12-degree enhancement, that when they had games there in September and the sun was clearly beating down on the turf, it was brutal on the field. Because think about it, if you had just like a nice summery September 80-degree day, that's 92 on the field. 12 degrees. They said for some reason that was, because usually I believe, and some people out there may know about this, the old artificial turf, my understanding was usually it was between 8 to 10. Apparently the turf they had in Kansas City increased the real field by 12 degrees. So that was the other reason that Montana told them. Not only did he not want to get beaten up on the hard concrete like artificial turf, he was also very much like he did not want to deal with the heat.
I don't blame him. That does not sound fun.
So I know that's a side note, but for some reason it just popped into my head. We were talking about the grass and so forth and so on. Nice Joe Montana story. And oh yes, by the way, Leonard Marshall did knock him senseless in the 1990 playoffs, and it was the last snap he ever took for the San Francisco 49ers. Did you see that, by the way? Somebody had that on Twitter yesterday. Did you notice it?
Had what? That play?
They claimed they had a screenshot from AI. Okay? They had a picture of Jim Burt smashing into Montana during the 86 playoffs. And AI had the write-up off the picture saying that was the last snap that Montana ever played for the 49ers. How he was just absolutely crushed and floored by Jim Burt. And that was the last play. And, of course, that's wrong. It was the Leonard Marshall shot. So, of course, I had to fix AI. When it comes to the Giants, AI, you will lose to me every time. It's just the way it's going to be. I'm sorry. So, anyway.
I did not see that, but doesn't surprise me.
How dare AI even try to challenge me? It's a joke. All right. Anyway, you can find our entire podcast network if you don't catch the show live on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcast. We are joining you from the Giants podcast studio presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. And speaking of getting better, the Giants hope they will get a lot better this year with the acquisition of one first-round outside linebacker named Abdul Carter. And, Matt, there are no shortage of fans of Abdul Carter because we haven't even touched the practice field yet for a real training camp. And this guy is getting accolades everywhere.
Yeah, so the latest, well, first of all, he's been getting a lot since the Giants drafted him.
Yes.
So it's been 2 months now where he's been, named to these rookie team, all rookie team predictions. And that's exactly what happened this week with NFL.com putting out their all rookie team predictions. And by that, it just means the guys that they think at each position that will be the biggest instant impact rookies. And so, not really going out on a limb, but of course, when it came to the edge rusher position, the first guy on the list was Abdul Carter. And the article mentions, the fact that he's surrounded by Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence. He's going to have a ton of one-on-one opportunities, as you and I have discussed countless times.
Yes.
And he's probably going to take advantage of those opportunities. I mean, again, as you mentioned, those practices in the spring, there's no contact. So the offensive linemen are not engaging with the pass rushers like they will in a month from now and like they do in actual games. However, despite that, it was very easy to see that Abdul Carter just looked, at least in my opinion, he just looked different out there. The way that he was able to get off the line of scrimmage, bend around the offensive tackles. We've obviously seen some very talented defensive linemen in this building. And I can only speak for the guys that I've seen up close and personal on a day-to-day basis since I started working here. This is going into my 7th season. He just looks different out there. Like I can't remember an edge rusher moving as quickly off the line, the bend that he has, the athleticism. In the last 7 seasons, I can't remember a guy moving quite like we saw Abdul Carter move throughout the spring. I cannot wait for training camp to see what he can do once he actually has the offensive lineman, legitimately trying to stop him, not what we saw throughout the spring, because those are going to be some of the best matchups. And I hope we get to see him and Andrew Thomas, at least some snaps, go up against each other, because as we say every year, iron sharpens iron. You want your best on best. And, he's got to come out and show it when the games actually start mattering. But Abdul Carter definitely has the makeup and the potential to end up being the best edge rusher in what is a talented group of edge rushers already.
I never understood all the questions going into the draft about why would they take him, because that gives them 3 edge rushers, and how are they going to use him? How are they going to get him on the field? It doesn't make sense. They already got 2 edge rushers. I never understood that. Now, as much as, we all knew that there were 3, quote, blue chip players in this draft, and he was one of them, there still seemed to be some doubt about, well, are you going to get real value out of him because he's not going to be able to play all the time? Well, since the Giants have taken him, and now we've heard the coaching staff talk about him, I hope you folks understand there was no reason to worry because they'll get him on the field.
Yeah, I think those concerns or questions that you mentioned leading up to the draft might have been coming from, Foxborough, in hopes that, that maybe they could somehow plant seeds and make the Giants not take Abdul Carter at 3, so then the New England Patriots could get him at 4.
Okay.
Because quite frankly, I don't understand any of those questions or concerns.
None of us did. Not here.
None of us had
Not
any.
on this show.
None whatsoever. And again, it's only the spring and no contact, but so far he's lived up to the billing.
He has.
He's looked the part so far. And again, it won't matter until he starts doing it, starting in a month, and then really once the games start, of course, we'll be the first to admit that. But so far, so good from Abdul Carter. Let's put it that way.
I want to ask you an interesting question.
Okay.
We know he's going to play different spots within this defense. He could be a spy some. He could be inside some. He could be as a off-ball some. He could be an edge guy some. He could even be a stand-up 3 technique, blitzing up the middle. There are so many ways you can use him. Now, at the end of the year, there'll be a chart, and PFF will be one of those that log how many snaps he takes at each position. Where do you think he will take his most snaps?
That is a good question.
It is a good question. That's why I'm asking you.
I guess I'm gonna go with edge. I think they'll find a way. I think they're gonna have somewhat of a rotation between the 3 edge rushers, who's lining up primarily on the edge, who gets moved inside. Of the 3, he definitely, I would say, has the skill sets, I would say, the most to line up and succeed on the inside.
Yeah.
Probably a little more so than Brian Burns or Kayvon, who obviously have NFL experience playing pretty much almost exclusively on the edge. With Abdul, he's not that far removed from not playing the edge at all, going back to his Penn State days, just 2 years ago when he wasn't lining up on the edge. So, but I think based on the potential, obviously, if one of those if Burns or Kayvon were to get hurt, then obviously Abdul would move to the edge and probably play there full time while that other guy is out. And while we know that injuries just happen every single year in the NFL, I'm going to go ahead and say the edge, because I also just think that once he gets out there and starts performing and producing in games, he's going to make it very difficult for the Giants coaching staff to not put him out there basically every single play and put him in the position that he's going to have probably find the most success in, which, as great as he is, and as I do think he will be able to find success lining up all over the defense. I think we saw last year he was at his best lining up on the edge. So I think they're going to find a way to get him out there. Now, it might be a very, very slight lead between the edge and maybe the inside or
so you're hedging
linebacker.
A little bit on this.
Well, I do think when we look at that PFF chart,
he's going to be in like 5 different spots.
Barring some unforeseen circumstances or, a serious injury to one of those other guys, I really think he's going to get a significant number of snaps at a significant number of positions. He's not going to just be, 600 snaps on the edge, 75 snaps inside, 30 snaps at off-ball linebacker. I think it's going to be very close at all those positions.
All right, so I pose that question to you folks out there. Coming up, by the way, at 1 o'clock, we will be previewing another one of the Giants' opponents this year, our summer camp preview of the New Orleans Saints. That's coming up at 1 o'clock. But I do pose this question like I posed it to Matt. You want to give us a call at 201-939-4513. What position on the field do you think Abdul Carter will take the most snaps at this season? I'm a little less sure that it's going to be the edge, because I think when they get all 3 guys on the field, and I got a feeling that's going to happen a lot.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider the sub package, because he's going to be a primary part of the sub package. When they go sub, he's not going to be one of the 2 edge guys, I don't think. And if teams, as they usually do these days, pay 65% sub package, that increases the odds, unless someone gets hurt outside, which you're right. One of the edge guys gets hurt. I mean, he's going to be in that rotation. One of those guys goes down, immediately that snap count shoots up.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very likely scenario. If neither Tibbs or Burns gets hurt, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets more snaps on the inside.
It wouldn't surprise me at all either. Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah.
And I hope you end up being right, because obviously would prefer everyone to stay healthy and play all 17 games. That is, the ideal scenario. So I hope you end up being right. And I think, again, whether he's lined up on the inside, the edge, off-ball linebacker, I would be shocked if he does not have, at the very least, what we consider an encouraging rookie season.
Yes.
Like, there's no such thing as sure things with rookies. We've come to learn that over the last few years across the NFL. There's just no such thing as a bona fide stud, sure thing, guaranteed to be all rookie, future perennial all pro. That just doesn't exist anymore.
No.
But I would be very surprised if at the end of his rookie season, assuming he's healthy, if we don't, feel very good about the way that he is trending for the future years to come. Like, I would be shocked if he is not one of the more dominant rookie defenders in the NFL this year, based on what he did last year, his previous production, and a little bit that we saw in the spring. I mean, again, the guy just moves differently. He just it's tough.
I'm not putting up any defense against that.
It's tough for linemen to really stand out during the spring, and yet he did.
Yes,
he really did. I can't. How many plays do you remember where, again, no contact? I know, but Russell Wilson or whoever was playing quarterback called hike, and within maybe 1.5 seconds, Abdul Carter was in the quarterback's face. It happened more times than I can remember.
He has such explosion. And the difference, though, I want to make something clear, folks, because I've said this many times. O.C. Umenyiora had the quickest get off at the snap from the down position, from the three-point stance of any Giant I have ever seen. I still believe that. This is a different style of lightning quickness that Carter has. He's not doing it from the three-point stance. He's doing it from the stand-up.
Yeah.
And wow, he is as fluid as can possibly be. So in any event, that's our question for today about Abdul Carter. Now, on top of that, we're going to throw out something else here because it's a really cool news item. And I did not want to let this go by without mentioning it, folks, because after all, it's one of the Giants' own. Morehead State is renaming its stadium for Phil Simms. How cool is that? The official dedication is going to be on the homecoming weekend or during the homecoming weekend of October 18th. Simms played for the club from 1974 through 78. We know he was a first-round pick of the Giants in 1979. Threw for over 5,500 yards and 32 touchdowns during his career, and he was the OVC Player of the Year in 1977. Kelly Wells, the athletic director, just talked about the plaudits of Phil and how loyal he's been to the program over the years, everything he has done for the university, and of course, just by becoming the legend and the icon that he is. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I didn't know what Morehead State was or where it was until Phil Simms came to the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Again, this before I was born, so unfortunately, I can't say quite the same thing.
Well, then I guarantee you didn't know where they were either.
Yeah, you're right. But my only question is, what took them so long? Guy stopped playing there 47 years ago? He's definitely the best college football player to come from Morehead State. What took so long?
I don't have an answer. Now, here's what's really cool, and I did not know this, and I've known Phil a long time and pretty darn well. It says he returned to campus in 2015 to receive his bachelor's degree. I didn't know that either.
Love to hear that.
That's so cool. I got to congratulate him the next time I see him. I cannot wait to see Phil again. And boy, I wonder what they're going to do as they. Whoa, that's
maybe that's Phil calling.
Yeah, that's not good. No, that's not Phil. That's the athletic director at Morehead State thanking us for promoting the Phil Simms Stadium rename. No. In all honesty, I think it's awesome. I don't know if that means he just gets his name on the stadium, if it's going to be on the field, if it's going to be in the scoreboard. There are no details in the story that I just saw. But I just did not want to let that go without mention. I don't mind telling you folks, Phil Simms is my all-time favorite player in Giants history. He always has been, always will be. And so I wanted to make sure he got recognition. Phil Simms Stadium, again, October 18th is the dedication as Morehead State decides that they wanted to honor one of their own. All right, our number is 201-939-4513 on Big Blue Kickoff Live today. Our question is, which position on the field do you think Abdul Carter will take the most snaps at? I think the other curiosity that you didn't see the rest of that all-rookie team that was voted, or was he the only one that they cited?
No, they have the whole defense.
I'm curious who else on defense was on that list, specifically a defensive tackle. I'm curious.
Well, so the other defensive end or edge rusher was Donovan Ezuroku.
Right, Boston College.
Yeah. Went drafted by the Cowboys, and the defensive tackle they have obviously your boy, Mason Graham. No shocker there.
Your boy too.
My boy too.
We're both huge proponents.
And Derek Harmon.
Ooh. Okay.
Good. We praised the Steelers for that pick.
We did. We did.
He's going to be, I have no doubt he's going to be great with Mike Tomlin.
It didn't seem like he was getting enough hype going into the draft to me.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know why.
Don't understand it at all.
Guy's a stud.
Yeah.
He's a pure
then
stud.
we'll just go quickly through the rest of the defense.
Go ahead.
The two linebackers, Carson Schlesinger from the Cleveland Browns, Demetrius Knight Jr. from the Bengals. At cornerback, Will Johnson of the Cardinals and Trey Amos.
I don't.
Well, Trey from the Commanders. Then they have Jahdae Barron as the slot corner, and Malachi Starks of the Ravens, and Xavier Watts of the Falcons at safety position.
See, now Will Johnson's interesting to me because when we first got to the end of the season last year before the combine, I was very high on Will Johnson, and then I didn't know a lot about his injury situation, which apparently was getting more and more cloudy as we approached the combine. And then even after the combine, it sounds like, he's kind of banged up.
Yeah, I mean, that honestly is the only thing that explains his fall in the first round, because
the talent
in terms of just talent.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, I guess if you want to, Travis Hunter, I guess would be the top corner.
You could make a case Johnson may have been the second most talented corner.
I was going to say, right after Travis Hunter, in terms of just pure cornerback, Will Johnson, I mean, for most of the pre-draft process, he was that guy. I mean, he was being talked about as a likely top 10 pick throughout most of the pre-draft process until all this injury stuff started to come to light, and I guess the media maybe caught up with what the NFL teams were seeing throughout the process. But yeah, I mean, his drop, we were certainly surprised by it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. And to be honest, the thing that scared me is that when he finally did get drafted, we started hearing things like, well, this injury situation's kind of lingering for him, and it could impact his rookie season. That's not cool.
No, that's not what you want to hear from the rookie you just took with the first round.
This was NFL.com? Where did this...
this is NFL.com,
and yet they picked him.
They picked him.
Wow. Okay.
Who would you have maybe put above him?
Well, again, talent-wise, there is no question. He would have to be there. Injury-wise, it makes it kind of sketchy. I don't know. Man. I think there was a steady drop-off after him, though. The corners were not that highly rated going into this draft.
No, they really weren't.
So maybe that's why.
Past Travis Hunter, really.
So maybe they picked him by default.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't tell you who the third corner was after. Who was the next corner drafted after him?
Maxwell Hairston.
Jeez. And you know what? I'm not even sure what number he was picked.
He was actually picked
before
Will Johnson.
What number was he at?
I forgot. Will Johnson dropped out of the first round.
I knew he was a second round, wasn't it?
Yeah, he went 47th. Maxwell Hairston, the Bills took him at the end of the first round, 30th.
See, overall. I didn't even remember that.
And then Will Johnson was the next corner.
And Hairston, going into the draft, Hairston did not exactly set the sky on fire for me.
No. He did impress me when I got a chance to speak to him very briefly at the Combine. I asked him a couple of questions, mostly because he was just raving about Drew Phillips, and I liked hearing that. But yeah, the other corners, Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame, went a little bit after.
But Morrison
Will
also has injury history, too.
Yeah. Then there's Trey Amos.
I mean, we talked a lot about Morrison, like, that would be a consideration for the Giants maybe in the third round. Going into the draft, we talked about that. If you get him in the third round, great, but do you really want to draft him higher than that given his injury issues?
You know, the guy, now that I'm looking at a reminder of the cornerbacks that were drafted that would maybe be my pick.
Who's that?
And again, assuming injury-wise he's cleared, Siobhan Revel.
Oh, well, again, that's another guy. You're right.
I know. He's obviously coming off a serious injury, but prior to that injury, the beginning of the college football season, he was being talked about as potentially the number one corner in this draft.
Yes.
So he, obviously is coming off a serious injury, which is why he dropped all the way to the, 76th overall.
Man.
I kind of hope, he went to the Cowboys, so I don't want him to have the best NFL career unless he changes teams. Then I would say, power to him. But.
Nor do I. All right, it is time to get to our New Orleans Saints summer training camp preview with John DeShazier. I am sorry, John, if I butchered that name. I got a little bit of tongue-tied there at the very end. Of course, we appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. They will be playing the Giants during the 2025 season. And the biggest thing that we notice when we talk about the Saints is that Derek Carr is no longer the quarterback. He has retired after having some arm trouble. And, I was always a big fan. I know the people down in New Orleans didn't necessarily have great feelings about him. But I was a Derek Carr guy, and I think it's a shame to see his career end this way.
Yeah, I'm sure he wanted to go out differently, and who knows what the future holds. But certainly, I thought he was a lot more productive than fans gave him credit for, or discredit for. I thought he had some really nice numbers. And I don't think you look at Derek Carr and you say he's going to be a guy who's going to single-handedly win games. You're not going to have – there aren't many Josh Allens or, Lamar Jacksons or Patrick Mahomeses in the world. But he was much more than a serviceable quarterback. So, he took a lot of criticism, a lot of heat. But I thought at times he played pretty well for the Saints. And certainly his numbers seemed to bear that out. When he was healthy, he had a pretty good stretch run his first year. And then, his second year was basically spent unhealthy, but the Saints did not win a game when he was not the starting quarterback. He was 5-5, and they were 0-for when he was not the starting quarterback, 0-for-7. So there's a lot to be said for what Derek Carr was able to do. Was not a world beater, but he certainly was not the worst quarterback in the league. And I think he took a brunt of criticism because people around here are still looking for the next Drew Brees. And look, that guy ain't out there. There's a reason. There's a reason Drew Brees is the first ballot Hall of Famer, and fortunate franchises sometimes are able to stack them up like that. Green Bay with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and sometimes you get fortunate that way. But most franchises, when you have that kind of guy, the next guy who comes along isn't quite that guy, and so that guy gets a lot of criticism.
Yeah, so now looking at the aftermath of Derek Carr's, I guess, somewhat surprising retirement, left with a quarterback room of, I guess, some unproven commodities with Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, rookie Tyler Shough. What did you see from those three in particular throughout the spring? And I know, obviously, it's only June 25th, and a lot can change, but who would you say, at least as of today, you think is the front runner to be the Week 1 starting quarterback?
Well, I know the scrap really, I think, is going to boil down to Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shough. I know that the Saints are saying it's a three guy race with Jake Haener, and Jake Haener certainly is a guy who will compete. But I think it's going to come down to those two guys. And I think there's a reason Tyler Shough is the highest drafted quarterback in franchise history since Archie Manning in 1971.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that kind of weird? But he's a second-round pick. And nowadays, second-round picks are guys who are expected to play. The Saints thought highly enough of him to take him in that slot, and they feel like they got a real value for him. So I think the fight is going to be between he and Spencer Rattler. And I know Spencer Rattler started 6 games last year, and he played in 7 games. And, he had some moments. But I think the thing is wide open, especially when you have a brand-new head coach. The slate is clean for everyone. So everyone starts from ground zero. And so, yes, Spencer Rattler got that experience, and hopefully he'll put that to use in the quarterback race. But I think Tyler Shough is the guy to really pay attention to because, there's a reason you draft these guys in the second round. There's a reason you spend so much capital. And, look, you don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time with development because Tyler Shough is already at an advanced age.
Sure.
And so, now I understand the quarterback window is wide open now, where Aaron Rodgers is going on 41, and Tom Brady played in his 40s, and Drew Brees made it into his late 30s. So you get a wider window with quarterbacks. But I think when you draft a guy as high as Tyler Shuck was drafted, there's an expectation there.
John DeShazier from the NewOrleansSaints.com staff joining us here as we preview the Saints. They'll be playing the Giants in October, Week 5, I believe, of the regular season. Yep. So we do look forward to seeing them up close and personal. Let's stick with the offense because we've talked about the quarterback situation, but Alvin Kamara has another year on his belt, or under his belt, I should say. And John, I've always admired him. I've always enjoyed him as one of the exciting players in this league, but at some point, the gas starts to get a little bit thin in the gas tank. How much does he have left being a dynamic focal point of this offense? Or do they have to start trying to find other ways to move the ball downfield?
Well, I think they do need to lessen the load on him. He was a little beat up last year. However, he ran for a career-high rushing total, and he was on a nice pace with his touchdowns and everything. He's already the leading touchdown scorer in franchise history. So, and he's a guy who there's never a day in life, today, yesterday, 5 months ago, 5 months from now, that Alvin Kamara isn't in supreme physical condition. So he's a guy who takes care of himself. Now, you don't want to overuse him. I think when Sean Payton was head coach here, I think the optimum was you run him, 12, 15, 16 times a game. You get him 6, 7 catches, and you get him close to 20 touches, that kind of way. When you have to run him 23, 24 times, that's when the injuries kind of pile up on him because running backs in the league take a beating. The encouraging thing is, Kellen Moore was offensive coordinator with the Eagles last year, and we saw what Saquon Barkley did. But Saquon Barkley is a different type of running back than Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is much more of a receiving threat. He's a really good blocker, but he's also a shifty guy. Again, you don't want him to have the heavy workload of 20 to 25 carries a game. So you want to see how you can kind of mitigate the circumstances and mitigate the punishment that he takes. And the Saints, they drafted a guy late, Devin Neal from Kansas State. They have Kendre Miller on the roster, but there's going to have to be a second guy in that running back room that can lessen some of the load on Alvin Kamara because, again, he is getting a little bit older. We understand that when running backs get older, they age, in dog years pretty much. And so you want to make sure that you can keep him fresh for as long as possible. But, again, he's a guy whose physical conditioning and his commitment to being the best he can be is unquestioned in the history of the franchise. He's a guy who, he's got not just cat-like reflexes, but it's hard to get the guy off his feet. And so he's one of the guys who, he can take it. You just don't want to put too much on him. And I think Kellen Moore understands that when we've seen the best of Alvin Kamara, it's been a guy who's been getting no more than 15, 16 carries a game and probably get 5, 6 catches a game, get his touches that way. Because a lot of those catches can be like runs, if you're talking about swing passes and wheel routes and those kinds of things, and choice routes and those kinds of things. So, Kellen Moore has shown he knows what to do with a good running back. Hopefully he'll do the same thing with Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I'm going to turn the attention to one of the guys that will be blocking for him up front. So, around our building, our area, a big storyline this offseason has been Evan Neal making the shift from tackle to guard. And the Saints have someone that's doing the same exact thing this offseason, and Trevor Penning, a former first-round pick that hasn't quite cut it out as a tackle, is now being moved inside to guard. I know obviously during OTAs and minicamp there's no contact, so there's not a whole lot you can learn from the offensive line, but I guess what are expectations for Trevor Penning now that he's making this move to the inside?
Well, it's his third position in 3 straight years. So, that hopefully says something about his versatility because he was not a great right tackle last year, but he certainly was serviceable and he was a starter. So now you move him to left guard, and this staff has had success with players moving from tackle to guard. Now you put him in a smaller area. He's a big, strong, athletic kid, and you hope he can utilize his talents there because really the Saints feel like if they draft it well, they feel like they've got their bookend tackles for a while. You got Kelvin Banks at left tackle. That's where he's played his whole life, and he came out of Texas first round pick. And then you've got Talifuaga at right tackle. He played left tackle last year, played it very well, but he's played right tackle his whole life. So he moves back to right tackle. So you feel like you have your bookends there. It's going to be critical that Trevor Penning can hold up at left guard because, he looks like he's a guy who he looks the part. He's the first guy off the bus kind of guy. So you want to see if the efficiency and if the effectiveness matches the physicality. The Saints believe that they have that in him. They believe, they like moving him in there, and they like how it looks. Again, you mentioned it's OTAs, it's minicamp. There is no contact, so you don't know what you have really with offensive and defensive linemen until they're able to put hands on each other and really start imposing their will on each other and moving guys around, and you get into some one-on-one drills, and you see how guys' feet operate and see how the hands operate and those kinds of things. But they feel like he can function in there. They're really high on him functioning in there. We'll see how that goes once they get to training camp and get a little bit more physical with it.
Well, John, if they're able to protect whoever the quarterback is and they try to throw the ball downfield, if I were a Saints fan, I would be a bit concerned because I see Brandon Cooks is so long in the tooth that I can't really say exactly what he has left in his tank. And I know they brought him in from Dallas. And believe me, we saw him playing for Dallas, being in our division. So we know that he's not the player he used to be. And Chris Olave's had how many concussions now? I mean, to be honest with you, I'm worried about him. And those are your two most dynamic receivers. I kind of wonder about the thinness of that receiving core.
Yeah, there is concern there for me. Now, of course, the coaching staff says they feel pretty good there, but I'm going to be honest. When you're talking about Chris Olave, you're talking about also Rashid Shaheed, throw him in there along with Brandon Cooks. You're talking about three smallish receivers, each of whom have had injury issues. And so now you're talking about three small guys who have been getting hurt in their NFL careers. Now, can you scheme them open and make sure they catch it in space and, you lessen the hits on them? Yeah, sure you can. But, this is the NFL. And they're going to be small winners, and they're going to have to be contested catches, and guys are going to take hits. That's what this game is. And so, yeah, there's concern there. Now, have they filled out a little bit there with some of the guys they have on the back end? We'll have to wait and see what that happens with too, because they have Bub Means, who they brought in last year as a draft pick, and you add him in, and you want to lessen some of the load maybe with Jawan Johnson, who's at tight end, and you can kind of hopefully use him as a receiver a little bit because he was a receiver in college. He's a bigger guy now, but he's a guy that you might be able to work in some of those situations. But you're talking about three guys who are really quick twitch, but they're also small guys. And small guys in the NFL, we know historically, have gotten hurt. They get injured. They get hit. And so, and if it's not a soft tissue injury with, a hamstring or something like that, then it's something, that's a little bit bigger. And, we've seen Chris Olave, I think it's 4 concussions now in the NFL. And that's not counting the concussions that he had at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. And so now you start concerning yourself with his well-being. Now it's like, okay, is there a helmet that he can wear that can kind of lessen this possibility? How do you, lessen the possibilities of him getting another concussion? How do you put him in the best positions to be effective, to take the least amount of punishment, and to be productive? And again, this is the NFL. You can't get away from every strike, every blow in every game. It's going to happen. So, we pray for his health around here, obviously, because he's a dynamic player when he's healthy. But, you've got three smallish guys that hopefully, again, you're depending on Kellen Moore's, prestige and his wisdom as an offensive coordinator and a play caller and those things as a play, a guy who schemes up things for these guys to be able to get them in position to where they're not in peril all the time.
Yeah, so I feel like the one guy we have not mentioned at all on the offensive side of the ball is Taysom Hill, who we've seen the Saints use in such a wide variety of ways over the years. Now, I know he's coming off a pretty serious knee injury from last season, so a two-parter. One, where is he in his rehab and his progress? Is he expected to be ready for the start of training camp? And then two, just given, I guess, expectations for the Saints this season, considering the quarterback questions, do you think that there is a chance between Taysom Hill, and I'll even throw Chris Olave in that conversation, that those could be two guys that could potentially get moved at some point, whether it's before the start of the season or even before the trade deadline?
Well, I don't think so. And Chris Olave, wants to be here, and the staff wants him here. They really want him here. And Taysom Hill is another guy that they want here. Now, he's got to get healthy. I don't know if he's going to be ready for training camp or not, because that was a severe knee injury, and he's had several dating back to BYU. And so now you got to get him back on the field. We know that when he's on the field, he is a menace. Whether it's at tight end, whether it's at, sometimes he plays a little tailback. And, of course, when he's running quarterback power, there are a few guys who can run it the way he can. Mm-hmm. So he is an extremely valuable guy if you can get him back on the field and get him healthy totally, and he can be the Taysom Hill that we're accustomed to seeing. That's going to be a large chore to be able to get him back and get him 100% and get him back to exactly what people expect to see out of him. But I certainly don't expect Olave to move. I don't know about the possibilities of Taysom because, again, he's injured right now. And if I'm a team who's interested, I got to see him and see where his rehab is and see how he's progressed before I want to even think about making a commitment or taking a hard look. But the first thing for the Saints is to get him back on the field, get him back out there at tight end, see what he's got left in the tank, because I think Taysom Hill is 34 or so right now. And so, he's at that point where, guys start to kind of tail off a little bit, but he's been such a phenomenal player. He really didn't play his first 2-3 seasons in the NFL because he was an undrafted rookie. And he started out here playing special teams. He was on the kickoff cover team. and so he's a guy who, from a mileage standpoint, he doesn't have a lot of miles on him, but he's had some serious injuries, especially when you're talking about ACLs and those kinds of things. Yeah. So you have to see, how he responds from that again, because I know this is at least his second ACL injury, and it's like, it's heartbreaking to see what the guy has gone through, considering what he's willing to give to the team in terms of his effort and sacrificing his body. So hopefully he'll come back healthy 100% or as close as he possibly can, because he is a jack of all trades, and he's one of those guys you throw out there, and when you put him on the field, stuff happens. Things happen. When he gets past the line of scrimmage, there aren't many defensive backs who want to tackle him. They don't want to see him coming. And so with the Saints, he is a valuable weapon offensively if you can get him back on the field and get him healthy. I think he's got a big future, or at least a big season in this offense if he can get back on the field.
John, we got only a couple of minutes left, and I feel like, it might be best just to meatloaf the defense as one. They did not have a very good defensive season last year by anybody's metrics. It was a rough year for the Saints D, but yet when I look at this preseason depth chart that I have in front of me, I see a bunch of familiar names. There's Jordan, and there's Young, and there's Brzee, and there's Werner, and there's Davis, and McKinstry, and Honey Badger. And I see Justin Reed comes over at safety from Kansas City. All right, that's a nice upgrade. He's a good player. Okay, there's no doubt about that. But I don't see any additions during this offseason to a defense that did not play well that is suddenly going to make me excited or think that they can turn it around. So I'm going to ask you to convince me, how can the Saints get better defensively?
Look, you're asking me a hard question right there, because they're going to switch schemes, go from 4-3 to 3-4. But here's the thing, and you mentioned the names: Tyrann Mathieu, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis. These are the three linchpins of the defense, guys who are a little bit longer in the tooth. And so, how much do they have left effectively? Because the NFL isn't a sentimental league. I mean, this is a production league. And so how much do they have left, and how productive can they be, and how effective can they be? We know about their past, but look, Father Time ain't lost to nobody. And so these guys are older. How productive can they be? And will the scheme help them from that standpoint? Because now we're talking about Cam Jordan being on the edge and dropping into coverage every now and then. And the same with Chase Young and Carl Granderson and those guys. But now we're asking him to do some things that he has not done in a 15-year NFL career. And so, now you're trying to disguise some things and hopefully make these guys more effective, put them in better positions to make plays. Because, as you mentioned, last year the defense, it was bad. There's no way to sugarcoat.
I tried to be nice.
No. There's no way to sugarcoat it. I mean, and they know that. And look, they're the first ones to tell you that. They will, self-admit, we were a bad defense last year, because the numbers don't lie and the scores don't lie. All those things tell the truth. They tell the tale. And so now they've got to be a lot more productive with a lot of the same pieces. So can those guys, one, stay healthy, and two, be more productive in a new scheme? That's something that remains to be seen. Justin Reed will probably free up Tyrann Mathieu to be able to do some other things and maybe be a little bit more of the quote-unquote honey badger that we're accustomed to seeing. But again, you got to be able to pressure the quarterback before you can do anything. And so do they have the proper people up front to be able to get to the quarterback? Brian Brzee was fantastic at defensive tackle last year.
Yeah.
He's going to have some help. That's going to have to be Carl Granderson. That's going to have to be Cam Jordan. That's going to have to be Chase Young. Those guys are going to have to get after the quarterback, because if you can't get quarterbacks on the ground in the NFL, you cannot win. If you can't get guys off their spots, if you can't harass them, if you can't hurry them, if you can't hit them, it's hard to win in this league. So that's going to be the biggest thing. Can they get to them out of that 3-4 up front with now edge rushers and, maybe bringing a little heat from the linebacker and that kind of thing? And that's going to be critical. And they couldn't get to the quarterback enough last year. And if you can't get to the quarterback enough, it's going to on your secondary, and they were not the best secondary in the world last year, especially at the cornerback position. And that's another question mark. Do they have good enough cornerbacks to hold up? But a lot of that goes hand in hand with being able to get to the quarterback. You don't have to hold up as long as you can get to the quarterback.
Well, John, the only thing I can say from the Giants' perspective, despite the fact that the Saints may have a lot of questions going into this season, is that the game against New Orleans in Week 5 is down there in the Dome. And I don't think I need to tell you that has been a chamber of horrors for the New York Giants for a long, long time. Everything seems to go wrong down there when they play the Saints. And even when it went right some years ago, Breeze wound up outgunning Eli in one of the greatest passing performances by two quarterbacks I'd ever seen, only to have the Saints win it on a personal foul on special teams that set up the last-second field goal. So you understand my trepidation in coming down to your place, okay?
Yeah. Well, we'd like for it to continue to be a house of horrors. Now, the thing is, are the Saints a good enough team for that? Because the Saints have not been a great home team. They've not been a great road team. They've not been a great team anywhere the last 3-4 seasons. So they got to get that back, because when the Dome is right, it is right.
I know.
It's a place that's hard to hear. It's hard to win. It's hard to function in there as an opponent. But if the team ain't winning, it doesn't matter a whole lot.
All right. Well, John DeShazier, we appreciate your time calling us from the NewOrleansSaints.com staff. We appreciate it, and we will see you in a few months. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you, John.
Hey, thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. There's the wrap on the New Orleans Saints. And look, I can't get those games in New Orleans out of my head. It's been ugly. It's never, ever been a good place for the Giants to play. I'm sorry. Outside of Lawrence Taylor's one phenomenal game when he was basically scotch tape on the sidelines and wrecked them during a primetime affair many years ago. That's about the only time I can ever remember being happy when the Giants went to New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, that is just a very tough stadium to play in as the opposing team. It's very tough, and it's not just the Giants. It's a lot of teams, because those fans, whether the team is good or not, those fans show up, and they are loud throughout the game. So, when the schedule came out, everyone kind of circled that Week 5 game as like, oh, that's the first game that, the Giants will or could be favored in, and like the first game that you can, with somewhat confidence say the Giants should win. You can't. First of all, we know you have to play every single game on the schedule. No game is just a gimme.
Right.
But the fact that game is in the Superdome, so they will be going down to New Orleans and having to face that team in that stadium with that crowd, it is by no means a gimme. That is not like a layup W that, some people are trying to say that it is. It's probably going to be a dogfight. Despite the question marks that Saints team has, which they certainly have some question marks, especially at the most important position. But that is just an incredibly tough stadium to perform in when you are dealing with that hostile crowd. So it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a good matchup.
Okay, so the Saints have won 6 of the last 8 games when they've played the Giants down in New Orleans. Okay?
Yeah.
6 of the last 8. And some of them were really disgusting losses for the Giants. I don't mind telling you. Okay? Just saying. Anyway, 201-939-4513. The rest of the program, what do we got? About 10 minutes left. It's on you, folks. Give us a ring at 201-939-4513. Do you want to talk about the Giants and the Saints matchup in Week 5 down in New Orleans? Maybe that's a game that you guys have circled on the schedule that, you know what? We like the city. We like to go have a good time. Maybe that's a road game that you actually would like to go see. Maybe you want to go to Vegas to see that game against the Raiders. I don't know.
Both of those would be very, very fun cities to go.
Well, they can be.
Fly to for a Giants game. New Orleans, especially. I've been to New Orleans a few times, mostly for Mardi Gras, to be honest.
Okay,
quite a different experience.
I don't even know when that is during the calendar year.
It's always typically in mid to late February, sometimes
so
early,
we're not dealing
early
with that.
March. No, definitely not dealing with the Mardi Gras crowd. I don't think the Superdome would be able to host the game Mardi Gras weekend because that city turns into an absolute circus in the best way possible.
Well, I'm gonna tell you a quick story. Let me see if I can find here what year it was specifically. Giants go down to New Orleans. Let me think. Okay, here it is. 2018. Giants go down to New Orleans, and we're playing them the night before Halloween. I think, no, that wouldn't be it. No, it wouldn't be it. When was it? Oh, here we go. 2015. The night after Halloween.
Yeah.
Night after Halloween.
It's the game we were talking about.
Okay. So, Giants go down there, and of course, I like to do my walks and stuff, and I'm walking down, I guess it was
Bourbon Street,
the main street.
It's a fun street to walk down.
And I get approached by a vampire. No joke. The guy was twice as pale as Lance, 5 times as pale as Schmelk. And he comes up to me and he goes, "Let me feel your pulse. Do you want to feel mine?" And I'm like, "Excuse me?" I'm like, man, I couldn't wait to get away from this guy. And he follows me as I'm trying to walk away. No, see, I have no pulse. I suck people's blood. And I'm like, oh, man, this is just not the place that I need to be. At which point, I proceeded to pick up the speed of my walk, and I got away from him pretty darn fast. But the dude was literally walking up and down the street, approaching people, insisting that he was a vampire.
I mean, as someone that's been to New Orleans
quite a
few times, you could have told me that story took place in May, and I would have believed you. Stuff like that happens on Bourbon Street all of the time, so that doesn't surprise me.
I will never forget it. And you know what? If he really was a vampire, then I can say that I actually met a vampire.
There you go.
Wasn't interested in engaging in any conversation with him. But in any event, that's an experience that I had in New Orleans. Needless to say, it is not my favorite city, and certainly not for the Giants with the experiences that they have had on the football field in the Superdome. We go to our phone lines to escape this horrifying tale. JJ in Bristol, you are next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hey, what's going on, Paul? What's going on, Matt?
How you doing?
I'm going to try and lighten up the mood from vampire talk.
Thank you.
Please do.
So I went to the game last year, the home game. Obviously, it wasn't the ending that we wanted to see. I'm using my one vacation this year to go down this year with me and my dad to go see the game. The question I kind of have is, from what we saw last year to what we're going to see this year, what do you think the areas of our success is going to come from?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'll quickly just touch on both sides of the ball. On offense, the offense is going to be better because I think we're going to see just a lot more consistent production out of the quarterback position. Russell Wilson just brings a level of, just consistency that the Giants have been lacking since Eli Manning retired. moving over to the defensive side of the ball.
Can I add explosive plays?
Yes, explosive plays too. He throw the ball downfield. Yeah. He's probably the best downfield thrower the Giants have had in a long time, with those moon balls especially. So, yes, very good point there. And on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, just look at all the talent that the Giants brought in on the defensive side of the ball. Not only this offseason, I would say the last 2 offseasons, they have completely revamped the defense. They built it around, Dexter Lawrence, and the defense has the potential to be a elite top defense this year. I mean, every level of the defense has talented players, but especially up front and in the secondary, there's just so many guys there that like we've been talking, we don't know where they're all going to play because there's so many, at least on paper, so many talented players there. So if the Giants are going to have a successful season or more success than last year, and especially against New Orleans, I think primarily it's going to be the defense carrying the team this year.
I think the 2 things, my man, that we don't know yet, we don't know how much the rush defense has improved. We can't because there's no contact. That's a big question that still has to be answered. And then the other one for me is, how is this offensive line going to shake itself out? We got numbers that we've seen in that room, a lot of numbers, but how's it going to shake out? Who are the 5 going to be? Are they going to be the starting 5 from last year, or are they not? And are they going to stay healthy and stay intact so that they can actually have some semblance of chemistry and get this offense flowing? We don't know the answer to that either.
Definitely, I 100% agree.
So those
with
are the
that.
2.
Honestly, last year it was the secondary I was looking at. This year, for me, at least, it's going to be the O-line. That's got to be the most consistent area. So another question I have is, obviously, besides the fact that they have a rookie quarterback starting, or Spencer Rattler, who you could say might be considered somewhat of a rookie, what would you think some weaknesses that we could take advantage of in that game?
Well, the Saints right now are really discombobulated. They're in the middle of rebuild mode. They've got guys who are so old and so long in the tooth, they basically outplayed their window of opportunity to be a contending team. And you can't rebuild in one shot. It's going to take them 2 or 3 years to start climbing back up the hill again. I mean, the defense is old. It's not very productive. The offense, we've already talked about their wide receiver room. That's kind of unimpressive. Kamara's getting old. They got to change now with quarterbacks. I mean, look, I don't just hit me if I shouldn't do this, but that's got to be a team the Giants need to beat. Okay? That's a team the Giants need to beat. Look at the 2 rosters.
100%.
They're not even close. So, no, what problems do the Saints pose? They don't pose any. This is a team you got to beat.
Yeah, I mean, their best players, especially on the offensive side of the ball, as John was talking about earlier, all have injury concerns. I mean, Chris Olave is undoubtedly a great super wide receiver, but again, the concussions, those are a serious issue. I don't know how many he can endure and continue with his NFL career. Brandon Cooks has dealt with injuries his whole career. He's been, I would say, I think I like him a little more than you do based on what you were saying about him before. I think he's a solid veteran receiver, but he's not, the guy that's going to get you 1,000 yards like he used to be.
Not now.
Not at all. And Rashid Shaheed, I think if healthy, he would be a serious weapon for them, but he's coming off a major injury himself. And Taysom Hill coming off a major injury. All of their best playmakers, other than Alvin Kamara, have some sort of injury concern. And when you mix that with the question marks at the quarterback position, that, leaves a lot to be desired when talking about the offense. And just in terms of their general roster construction, I mean, the Saints were one of those teams that kept on kicking the can down the road in terms of salary cap charges towards the cost of players per year. They kept on pushing it more dead money into future years. And as we talk about all the time, that's great. You can do that for a decent amount of years, but eventually you're going to have to pay the piper. And it seems like after a lot of years of kicking the can down the road in terms of the salary cap, they are finally having to pay the price for it. And you can kind of see it with the way that they've constructed this year's roster.
JJ, there's a reason why a few months ago, before the schedule came out, I think I talked about this with Matt. I know I talked about it with John, and I think with Lance. I picked out 4 teams on the schedule, and I said these are probably the softer 4 teams on the slate. And if I could get the NFL to put 1 or 2 of those 4 teams in September, I'd be really happy, because that would help the Giants get off to a good start. Well, they wound up getting the Saints in week 5, which was a little later than I would have liked. I would like to have had them in week 1, 2, 3, or 4, but they're in week 5. Hopefully the Giants are better than 0-4 by the time they go to New Orleans.
Oh, exactly. I mean, the last win I saw was that 2022 victory in Jacksonville. So I'm due for a win. I want to see a win bad. I'm using my 1 vacation week just to go see this game with my dad, something we do every year. So I just got one more question that I'll take off the air, and I got a statement after the question.
Go ahead.
So with the new draft pick that we just got, I'm wondering for depth players that are currently on the depth, what their role is going to be now that we brought in some potential good rookies. Guys like Darius Muasau, Jordan Riley on the D-line, Cordell Flott, and my boy Daniel Bellinger. And then the statement I have is, I love all you guys. You guys are awesome. I try to go down to the summer training camp every single year. I get 1 release day on Monday that I try to go. Paul, man, you are my absolute favorite. I love listening to you every single time. It would make my day if you have the time. I know you're a very busy man. If I could get a picture with you when I come down to the summer
Absolutely. Just yell for me from the stands, and I'll come over. We'll do it. Thank you.
I appreciate that so much, guys. And again, I'm a huge fan of the show. This is the highlight of my afternoons. I listen every single time. Thank you guys so much for what you do. I'll take it off the air from here.
Thanks for sticking with us for as long as you have. And please continue rooting and continue, listening to the program, because we enjoy having loyal fans.
Yes, thank you, JJ.
In terms of his thoughts on those 4 players, I'm of the opinion that Bellinger and Flott have very good footing on this roster, and that Bellinger will still see time in the double tight end offense, and that Flott is absolutely on the upswing, and if one of the corners goes down on the boundary, he's the first one up. And look, I don't know that he's going to wrestle the job away from Banks opposite of Debo. I don't think that's the case. I know the Giants have kind of said there's a competition, but I don't think it's a real competition. I think Banks has got the lead on it, and he's going to have to lose it. But I've always been a Flott fan ever since he's been here. The other 2 fellas, I'm sorry, but they got to fight for their spots. If you're back on the depth chart, your spot's not guaranteed. You have to fight against everybody else who's battling.
Yeah, I mean, of the 4 guys that he mentioned, the only one I think is definitely safe and I could see having a big role is actually Cordell Flott. I mean, we saw him get reps and snaps opposite of Debo with the first team defense throughout the spring. Him and Deontay, kind of mixed in and out. It wasn't just him. So I think he will definitely have a role on the defense. In terms of the other 3, I mean, you and I have spoken. I've shared my thoughts about Bellinger. I think he's a solid player. I don't know exactly how the tight end room the depth chart's going to play out beyond Theo Johnson at the very top. I think the only reason I think that maybe could be a question mark is just because of his contract situation. He's just due on the last year of his rookie deal. He's due to, I think, make something reportedly $3 million, but it's not guaranteed. So if the Giants are in a cap crunching situation before the end of training camp, that is, if he doesn't have a great summer, that is just a situation where I wouldn't be shocked if they moved on from him in one way or the other. I do agree right now. I do think he will make the team, but I wouldn't be shocked. In terms of the other 2 guys, Muasau, I mean, the Giants did bring in a couple of veteran free agents at linebacker. They didn't draft anyone, though. And the veterans that they brought in, while they do play linebacker and will, certainly be on the depth chart at linebacker, those guys are special teams aces. Chris Board, Flanagan Fowles, those guys have made a name for themselves on special teams.
And Board's definitely making it.
Yeah, the Board 1,000%.
We know he's on the team.
Yeah, so I think those guys, while they were brought in as linebacker depth, I think primarily they were brought in for their special teams skills. So I think Muasau considering he was just a 6th-round pick last year and showed some flashes in his rookie season.
Oh, yeah.
I think he'll be on the team.
But I think he's got to earn it.
He's definitely got to earn it. I mean, everyone's got to earn it. There's no roster spots. There are no starting positions that are just going to be handed to anybody. And just in terms of Jordan Riley, I mean, he's part of now a crowded interior defensive line group where him more so than anyone else. And it's not just him. It's all those guys other than, obviously Dex and some of the guys that were just brought in this offseason, whether it was the free agents or Darius Alexander in the draft. All of the rest of those guys are going to have to earn their roster spots because that is now a crowded room. There's more talent there that this year than there has been the last couple of seasons. So those guys, especially for the bottom of the depth chart spots, they're going to have to earn it this summer.
Oh, that's a steel cage match.
Yeah.
To win those spots, that's a steel cage match.
That is going to be one of the, training camp competitions that I'm going to be most interested to see because, again, the last spot or two at that part of the depth chart, I think is going to be completely up for grabs.
All right, we've run a little long. I apologize. Just a reminder, Giants season tickets are available for the 2025 season. Go to giants.com/tickets. The Giants TV free mobile app is available. Get all kinds of fun stuff there to entertain yourself during the offseason. And then finally, the Giants Huddle podcast. Anything go up today?
Yes, I was about to say. Today, we posted John's interview with the wide receivers. He sat down with Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Amir Smith-Marset. That went up today. Yesterday, we posted John's conversation with Tyrone Tracy. And then Monday we had John spoke to a couple of the running backs.
Offense is the name of the game.
Scadaboo, Singletary, and Dante Miller. So all 3 of those huddles have been posted this week and are now up on thegiants.com and the Giants app and Giants YouTube.
Folks, that'll do it for today's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. We will be back tomorrow, and we will have another one of our summer training camp previews of the Giants' opponents. For Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. This has been Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So long, everybody.